Chapter 34. The King Undisputed. The mist clung to the high plateau, casting it into shadow despite the bright sunlit morning. Silas clutched the staff and trudged deeper into the elephant graveyard. The steam cast off from the geothermal vents made it hard to see too far ahead. The staff now glowed bright and strong. That meant they were getting closer. Zazu cawed and swooped ahead, but even he was hard to make out through the mist. It fogged the air. Aside from Zazu, no other creatures dared to sing or make noise. The elephant graveyard was desolate and deserted. Something treacherous and terrible lurked in the midst. It was Scar. This was the lion's true homeland, not the bright sunny expanse of the Pride Lands or the spirited desert of Camp Pride Rock. But if he became the king undisputed, if he claimed dominion over those lands and beyond, they would fall into mist and shadow, just like the elephant graveyard. Zazu called, then alighted on a scraggly tree with dead leaves. Somehow the carcass of the tree still stood, planted into the rocky earth, like a tribute to what once flourished here before Scar. The parent would go no farther. He gave Silas one last mournful cry, then tucked his head under his wing as if to say he could stand sentry, but could not continue. Silas understood this somehow. The staff throbbed and burned even brighter. It led him onward. Zazu vanished behind him into the mist, which seemed to swallow anything that entered this realm. But Silas kept going. The mist cleared, revealing the mouth of a cave tucked into the rock. It led downward, sloping into the earth. Mist, the steam, billowed out from it. Silas had a bad feeling about that cave. He swallowed hard, feeling a lump in his throat. But then he heard it. A baby crying. He recognized the rise and fall in shrill cadence. There was no mistaking George, but he sounded weak. Silas didn't hesitate. I have to save him. Clutching the staff, he hurried through the mouth of the cave and into the darkness. The staff grew brighter, lighting the way. He followed the pitiful sound of his brother crying. In the past, it had driven him crazy, but now it acted like a beacon. The farther he went, the mistier and hotter it got. The geothermal vents were clearly active in the cave. The steam fogged his vision and made it hard to see what was right in front of him. His foot caught on a rock, sending him lurching forward. He caught himself just in time. He stared down at the boiling hot geyser, only a few inches from his face. It burbled up from the rocks, threatening to blind him. That was close. He picked himself up slowly, limping slightly. He twisted his ankle, it seemed, but he had to keep going no matter what. The crying grew louder and sounded close now. He came upon a wide cavern, obscured by the mist that clung to the air. But first he saw two glowing eyes. Green eyes. They locked onto Silas and narrowed. Then the mist cleared as a warm draft wafted through the cavern, rustling his clothes and hair. You're late, little cub, Scar sneered. The lion lounged on a stone thrown at the back of the cavern, looking lazy, but his eyes told a far different story, one of a cunning predator. They darted to the staff. Oh, goody. You brought my staff, he drawled in his sultry, accented voice. He yawned and stretched out. Forgive me for not leaping for joy. Bad back, you know. The mist cleared even more, revealing George! Silas gasped when he saw him. His brother was imprisoned in a cage made from the bones of a long-dead animal, probably the rib cage left over from one of Scar's meals. George whimpered softly when he saw Silas. He was still wrapped in the same swaddle he was sleeping in when Scar stole him from his bassinet. Tears flowed from his eyes, staining his cherubic cheeks pink, and snot ran from his nose, but otherwise he looked unharmed. For now. Silas breathed a sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. Anger exploded in his heart like fire. "Look, he's just a helpless baby," Silas yelled at the lion. "It's not fair. Let him go." "Life's not fair, is it?" Scar said in his lilting tone. He flicked his paw lazily toward George, looking bored. Then, with a groan, he climbed to his feet and started pacing, his face contorted into an evil leer. "You got my message, I see?" "Yes, I brought you the staff," Silas said, and held it up. "But my aunt locked you away for a reason. She knew you were evil and would eventually destroy her camp." "Oh, she was so trusting," Scar said. "Just like my older brother. Pity. I could have helped her." "Helped her?" Silas scoffed. "I read about what you did to your brother. You only help yourself." Scar swiped at Silas, but the staff flared and drove the lion away with a flash of light. He whined and gnashed his teeth, but he stayed back for now. That was why Scar needed Silas to bring the staff to him, and why he couldn't just take it. Scar licked his injured paw with a mournful expression. "Oh my, if my big brother doesn't haunt me, even from the grave." Scar stalked over to the baby to his bone cage. The lion's green eyes glinted with menace. The baby whimpered softly. One swipe of a giant clawed paw, and the lion could end George's life. The message was clear. "Your brother haunts you for a reason," Silas said, wielding his aunt's staff like a formidable weapon that it was. "You caused his death. He was a great king, unlike you." "I'm 10 times the king Mufasa was, Scar roared in anger, thrashing at the air. "And once I get that staff, I shall prove it." "You want the staff?" Silas repeated. "The hyenas were supposed to bring it to me," Scar said with a roll of his eyes. "I'm surrounded by idiots. If you want something done right, I suppose you have to do it yourself." "So you kidnapped my brother? My baby brother?" "Indeed," Scar retorted. "So predictable. I knew you'd come for the little cub." "I just have one question," Silas asked. "Why do you want the staff so badly?" "Oh, my powers are very strong," Scar said. "But sadly, they're limited to the campgrounds. But with Rafiki's staff, let's just say I could become the king undisputed and rule over all the lands." "Rafiki?" Silas said, intentionally stalling. His mind was worrying, trying to find a way out of this mess, and a way to save his big brother. Scar let out an annoyed sigh. "Oh, he was a shaman of sorts. My poor diseased brother's closest advisor, but more of a baboon, if you ask me." Then he narrowed his eyes. "Don't worry your little head about him. All that matters is that staff." Silas flinched back and glanced at George. Scar's words made him hesitate. Giving the staff to Scar would put everyone in danger. But then George cried again. His head flopped forward. He was weak and exhausted. Silas knew he didn't have a choice. "Stop stalling. The baby for the staff," Scar said. "Little prince, do we have a deal?" Silas stared the lion down. His fear, his cowardice, they told him to run away. But he fought back against it. For the first time, he realized that he was brave. Moreover, it wasn't something that he'd had to learn. It had been inside him this whole time. He just hadn't known it. "We have a deal. On one condition," Silas said, keeping his voice steady. Lions preyed on weakness, he knew, and like hyenas, they scavenged when they could. "Oh, what's that, little prince?" Scar said, raising his eyebrows in an exaggerated expression. You have more demands, I see. Such a tiring negotiation. But do go on. You have to promise to leave my family and friends alone, Silas said. You won't harm any of us. Oh, and one more thing. You have to take care of Archie, too. Oh, poor Archie? Did you have a falling out? Scar said with an evil grin. You want him? Scar dragged his claws across his neck. The meaning was clear. Silas nodded with a grim look. He knew it was wrong, but Archie was slippery and couldn't be trusted. They had evidence linking him to Scarlett's murder, but it was possible Archie could still worm his way out of getting caught. Silas couldn't risk that. Do we have a deal? He asked. Yes, quid pro quo. Quid pro quo, Scar said in a bored voice. Don't worry. I won't touch a hair on your pretty little head. Or my family? Silas said. Or any of my friends at the camp? The staff pulsed with red light. It was a warning. But then baby George cried weakly. Silas didn't have much time left. He had to save his brother. This was all his fault. He had to make it right. This was his last chance. But still, Silas kept the staff. From reading the book The Legend of Scar, he knew that he couldn't trust the lion. Prove it. Let my brother go first, and then I'll give you the staff. A freebie? Scar said with a derisive snort. Why does everyone want things for free these days? More like a gesture of goodwill, Silas countered, holding his gaze. Indeed. As you wish, Scar said, rolling his eyes. But any funny business, and the deal is off. Consider it claw enforcement, he said, and then smirked with an evil leer. With that, Scar slapped his paw against the ground. Red light swirled around George, enveloping the baby completely, and then he vanished in a puff of smoke. Back to his bassinet, Scar said, just like nothing ever happened to the little cub. But Silas clutched the staff and backed away, unwilling to release it. Prove it, he demanded. Don't trust me? Scar said. Go ahead. Talk to your mummy. Give her a call. Silas pulled out his phone and powered it on. It lit up with 1,000,000 missed calls and texts, all from his parents. He was surprised it had a signal. He quickly dialed his mother. She picked up immediately. Where are you? She started, but Silas cut her off quickly. Mom, did you check your room? George, is he back home? His mother let out a startled cry. My baby! He's back! He's safe! Oh, thank God! Silas could hear George crying in the background. Okay, Mom. I promise. I'll be home soon. Silas hung up. Scar had kept his deal. Still, Silas hesitated, but then he held out the staff to the lion. If he backed out of their deal now, then Scar could hurt his brother and family again. This was the only way that he could save them from the conniving lion. Here, take it, Silas said. You kept true to your word. Now I'll keep true to mine. Scar reached out and took the staff, grabbing it in his mouth. It lit up with ruby light, but this time the power flowed into the ghostly lion. Scar grew even more powerful. His eyes glowed brighter, giving him a haunted appearance. He roared out his newfound power. Now I shall be king undisputed, not just of Pride Rock, but of all the realms beyond. Holding the staff in his deadly jaws, Scar stalked from the cave, leaving Silas behind, unharmed. Silas watched him leave, feeling both afraid but also relieved. He did it. He saved his family. This nightmare was finally over. With his last strength, he stumbled toward the cave's entrance. Now that he didn't have the staff, it was like all his energy had drained away. He couldn't believe it. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a scaredy cat anymore. His terrible nickname no longer held any sway over him. He had crossed the Pride Lands and reached the elephant graveyard, and he had faced off against Scar and rescued his baby brother. George was safe at home with his parents. He perked up at that thought. He couldn't wait to join them back at the cabin, where they could be a family together again. He realized something else amazing. He was actually looking forward to spending time with George, maybe for the first time. The thought of the silly smile on his brother's face when he giggled, and yes, when he burped, brought a grin to Silas's face. He thought of all the games they could play together when George got a little older and started walking and talking. They'd be just like his friends back home, and their siblings, or like the twins, except with less bickering over fractions. All he had to do was get back home, safe and sound. That shouldn't be so hard. Scar had promised not to harm him. The exit loomed ahead, shrouded in mist but promising escape. Silas hurried toward it. Suddenly, 3 dark figures appeared in shadow just outside of the cave. Eerie laughter echoed through the cave. He skidded to a halt, his heart leaping into his chest. But there was no mistaking what he heard. Hee